Perks of Being a Wallflower is one of the best movies that I've ever seen in my entire life. And if you haven't seen it, I do recommend going and seeing it, but be warned ahead of time. It's one of the few movies that like actually makes me tear up watching it. No matter how many times I watch it, no matter what happens, it's like they made the movie so well that it is genuinely hard to not tear up at it. Because when you watch this movie, it will bring out something deep and eternal inside of you. Something like so primitive to the human race. And I think there's just something so raw about the experience about it. Now, spoilers ahead. If you don't know what Perks of Being a Wallflower is, it is a movie about this kid named Charlie who it basically has just entered high school. And as he's entering high school, he has no friends. He doesn't really talk to his family or get along with them too well. Like he does, but it's kind of like on a level you get along with your family. Like you have nothing in common, but they're your family, so you're going to be friendly with them. And he's had a lot of things happen to him in his life. He's lost his best friend, he's lost his aunt, and he's also had some nefarious acts happen to him as well that he's trying to unpack throughout the movie and actually discover what it is that is kind of going on through his head. And basically, the entire time he's going through this movie, you're like, okay, he's a pretty normal kid. And in the beginning, they get you. They get you good. So he basically meets these two people, which are his friends. I'm sorry, I'm blanking their names. I know her name in the movie is like Sam. I'm just forgetting her name. But basically, these two are step siblings, and the guy in the back is obviously Ezra Miller, but he did amazing in this movie, and he plays basically Charlie's gay best friend. And throughout the movie, they are tight knit. It is really cool. They start playing upbeat music. It's chill. They get Charlie to like branch out a little bit, maybe do some things that maybe you shouldn't be doing as a kid, 100%. But as a overall, it's the first time he's ever been able to branch out and do anything. So you kind of feel for him. You're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then he starts getting these flashbacks of being a kid. And at first, you think that these flashbacks are something sweet. You think that he's just remembering things. Maybe they're a little bit sad, but as an overall, he's just remembering them because he's with his friends and it's kind of reminding him of old good times. And then the movie evolves and evolves and evolves. He falls in love with Sam, and basically Sam likes him but doesn't want to be with him. And I think one of the best quotes uh like ever heard is in this movie, which is people only accept the love that they deserve. And this quote kind of carries throughout the entire movie, where basically, even though they're all kind of in love with each other, none of them will ask each other out. None of them will talk about it. None of them will say anything about it. They might kiss here and there, but in reality, there's nothing really to it. And I think that's one of the things that kind of goes through the movie. And then they have basically the rest of their friend group as well, just to kind of give you guys a little bit of a broader perspective. They have a little bit more of it in their friend group, which is basically these three people here. You have Bob in the background, which is basically their plug. You have, I think this is Mary Elizabeth, which is essentially their spiritual friend, I guess is the best way to put it. And then they have I completely forget her name. Her scenes were so insignificant throughout the movie. I'm not gonna lie. But basically, they just call her the goth friend the entire time. That's what they do, and you kind of like the group. It's one of those things where if you didn't grow up in like that way, where you were around people who were constantly partying or trying to find an escape, it might seem a little bit strange because you're like, well, they're just teenagers. Why would they be doing this stuff? But in reality, you grow up in a small town, things get weird. Like, I lived in a lot of different places in my life, but when I lived in a small town, that was probably the weirdest I ever had. Like, every other kid was on something, whether it was something hard, or it was something you could just get from the gas station. And every other kid was also like hooking up outside of school too. It's pretty accurate to what it would be in a small town outside of the little bits that feel kind of like the Truman Show, I'll say, where they just kind of already know who Charlie is. Like there's no introduction between a character, like between him and Bob. There's real no introduction there because they don't see that as important. So it kind of feels like a Truman Show part where Bob comes up and he's like, "Hey, it's you, Charlie," and it's like they're best friends all of a sudden. And the same way with basically this football player that Charlie's like gay best friend is basically in love with. Like they show them kind of having this animosity, and then all of a sudden they're kind of like boys. So that's the only part of the movie where I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. But that's at the very, very, very beginning, and then a, basically a bunch of time passes throughout the movie. I don't want to spoil the entire thing, but a bunch of time passes throughout the movie, and something kind of starts to trigger Charlie more. He starts to bring up his past obsessions and his past depressions more and more and more, not in like talking, but in his head. Which, if anybody has ever done that before, in your head is probably the worst space you could be when you are trying to figure that stuff out. And he's going through it, going through it, going through it, and then his friends kind of cut him off at one point in the movie. I'm not going to tell you why, because I want you to go watch it. But they cut him off at one point in the movie, and this kind of sends Charlie into this downward spiral. He starts blacking out more. He starts having visions more. He starts thinking about his friends nonstop. He basically retreats completely back into the shell that we saw him in maybe the first 5 minutes of the movie, where now he's just this freshman high schooler with severe anxiety and severe depression. And all of his friends, by the way, are seniors. Just to throw that in there. So all of his friends are seniors. So he's also dealing with the fact knowing that everybody that he's made friends with is going to go away after this year because all of them are apparently smart enough to get into like Harvard and stuff. Don't really know how that works. Uh, but well, I know how it works. I get that people can be smart, but I think movies kind of just play it up a lot of the time. Like they're like, yeah, I'm going to Harvard, and you're like, no, you're not, bro. Like let's be honest, you're not going to Harvard. You might be going to your state university, but you ain't going to Harvard. But yeah, like so this kind of goes into a downward spiral, and then Charlie's like friend, the guy who's playing, as Ezra Miller. God, I can't remember his name. Uh, but Ezra Miller, basically throughout the entire thing, is dealing with the fact that he is openly out of the closet, but the person he's in love with, which is this football player, isn't, and his father is incredibly religious to the point where, like, he ends up finding them together and nearly uh, gets rid of his son. I don't think I can say the actual terminology without the video getting taken down because it's gruesome. It really is. Like how they describe the scene is so impactful. Where they're basically sitting in the guy's house, they're having a good time, and the father comes home, catches them, and he lays into his son to the point of like, I just figured out his name. It's Patrick, by the way. So Patrick essentially has like this breakdown, and he doesn't know what to do because he thinks basically the guy he's in love with is about to like be gone, and that's the best way I can put it without the video getting taken down. I'm sorry, but yeah. So this goes on, and we skip to the next scene, right? This scene is in the movie. This gets described to us later on. So we skip to the next scene where Charlie is sitting alone at lunch, and they are across the lunchroom from him, like all of his friends at a single table. And Patrick, or Ezra Miller, is walking through the cafeteria and gets tripped by a football player, where basically they're making fun of him for being a super senior or being dumb or just some cliche high school bully thing that they put in movies, something that just doesn't like really happen on that scale anymore, but they have to throw it in to add something. And Patrick is gets up and he looks at his football boyfriend who got beat up by his dad and is like, "Hey, are you going to do something?" And this starts kind of this argument. His boyfriend calls him a slur, and then they start jumping Patrick. And when they start jumping Patrick, everybody's freaking out. The girls in Charlie's like friend group like try to get involved, but they get pushed back. And the next scene we see is Charlie basically walking up, clenching his fist, and then the screen goes black and boom. And then the next second, the four, I guess the four bullies are on the ground, and he's picking up Patrick, and there's just something uh, like so magical about the scene. You know, I think it's the best representation of actually blacking out because of emotion. And it's become kind of this cringe thing to say over the years, but that is a real thing that happens because what your brain is doing is essentially anything that is slightly bad, it's instantly deleting. And it's something that you can develop personally if you go through a lot of traumas and a lot of different acts. Is like you get to this point where your brain will just delete things, or you'll just kind of be on autopilot and you won't remember what happened, like literally what happened at all. It just happened. Uh, and it's just such a good, insanely incredible representation of that. And that ends. They all become friends again. Yippee! And basically, the rest of the movie goes pretty chill until they all leave for college. Up until this point, it's been fairly chill. Has there been some scenes here and there? Yeah, 100%. Uh, but it isn't as bad as when they get up to them leaving to college. And when they're about to leave, Charlie's there. He says goodbye. Him and Sam finally get together, but they're not together because she's going to college and he's a freshman in high school. And basically, they say goodbye, and Charlie starts having these flashbacks, like as they're leaving. And as soon as he starts having these flashbacks, I love the actor by the way for this. What's his name? Logan Lerman. He's one of my favorite actors of all time. He played this so well. He basically starts having a full blown panic attack where he's sweating, he's heavy breathing, he's having these visions, and he starts walking home because he doesn't have a way to get home because they drove him everywhere. So he starts walking home, and he's like undoing his tie, trying to take off his jacket, and he's freaking out. And he gets home, and he was ready to basically end it. Uh, and they never say it in the movie, but you 100% know, and it was crazy, like how they play it up, and then next scene cuts, and he's obviously in a mental hospital, unpacking all of his life traumas and everything of that sort, and man, like this bunch of scenes, like in 5 to 10 minutes, like really just hits you in the gut, like really, really hard, because they unpack basically what would be someone's lifetime trauma, by the way, in 5 minutes. Yeah, so you basically get hardcore trauma dumped and then watch the person try to end it and then watch them end up in a mental hospital. And then you see, like, even his parents acting, which I don't remember their names at all. Like, they maybe mention him once in the movie. Uh, Even his parents' acting was so good to the point where like you kind of question if it's a real story or not. And I think that there's just something so magical about that. When a movie gets to the point where you actually have to question if this is a real story or not, it kind of puts you in this psychosis, I guess you could say, where it kind of sends you on your own downward spiral. And I love the movie. I definitely recommend it to anybody. If you haven't seen it, go see it. If you haven't seen it in a long time, go see it again. The only advice I will say is when you are done watching this movie, have something else planned. Don't sit in your bed and think about like how that could have been you or anything of that sort. You know, don't sing yourself in a downward spiral because that's also kind of how this movie is. Like it's so good that it will put you in a weird headspace if you allow yourself to just fester. But thank you guys so much for watching, and hope you guys enjoyed the recommendation. Have a wonderful night, everybody. Peace.